See, we're a minute after. Thanks so much for starting to let us know where you're at. This will be a really engaging session. Our goal is to help you learn from our great speaker, from one another, and really engage with this content today. So let's dive in. My name is Jason Breifel. I'm a non-attorney partner and the Director of Government and Public Affairs here at Shaw, Bransford and Roth. We produce the Fed Manager and Fed Agent newsletters every week, and I'm really pleased to have our speaker, Mika Cross, with us here today for this webinar. This is another one of our webinars in the series presented by our friends at WEPA. We really appreciate their support and helping make this happen. Today's session, Designing Work for Wellbeing, Success Skills for High-Performing Hybrid Government Teams, is going to be presented by Mika Cross. She's a transformation workplace strategist and government workplace expert who has designed award-winning, innovative, flexible workplace wellness programs across the United States government and in private industry. Mika is also an Army veteran and has worked as a career civil servant through the U.S. intelligence community, the Department of Labor, OPM, the Department of Agriculture, among others, and was also the Vice President of Employer Engagement at the fully remote company FlexJobs. Mika is called to testify as an expert on the future of federal work for the House Oversight and Reform Committee hearing, and continues to be an expert and leader in this field, where she's helping us navigate the changing world of work and what we can learn now to create a healthier approach to work for the future. I love seeing all the chat and engagement. Seeing a lot of folks come on in. Mika, thanks for being here with us today. For our audience, if you do have questions today, please use the Q&A tab. We'll be monitoring those. Please also use the chat just to engage with each other. We'll have a couple polls and some questions for you as we go along the way. But with those introductions, again, welcome. And Mika, over to you.
Thanks, Jason, and hello, friends. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, hopefully not evening. Jason opened with asking where in the world everyone was dialing in from, and I think that's because I just came back from Lisbon, Portugal, and Barcelona, Spain, where I was networking and learning from global enterprise leaders in the area of remote work, hybrid work, and distributed teams. And if there's one thing that I vowed to do when I left federal service to go learn and bring back promising practices to all of you to help the world of work work a little bit better for our dedicated public servants, it's that nobody has this right yet. And that's because workers, regardless of location, whether they are frontline workers working on the front lines in healthcare, in national security, in our intelligence communities, in uniform service, in our food and agricultural markets, in housing, you know, everyone is struggling post COVID. And I think it's really important for us to understand the reasons why, highlight some of the symptoms and the differences between stress and burnout and what the impacts are, but also talk about better ways of working. And that's why this has been such a call to action and focus of our nation's doctor, the highest ranking medical officer, our US Surgeon General. In fact, the Office of Personnel Management and the Surgeon General's office just held an event last week to really focus on this idea of well-being in the workplace as it relates to hybrid work and distributed teams and areas of isolation, all the things that we're trying to get right as agencies are looking to create their strategies for the future of work, consider how and when meaningful in-person work works best, and how to focus on the overall well-being of our workers, regardless, again, of location. And that's because we have learned after the global pandemic and working and living through a crisis that really a traditional 9 to 5 doesn't work for most people. In fact, if you're juggling caregiving responsibilities or parental responsibilities, if you're dealing with medical conditions or disabilities, or as you're aging, we all have needs both at work and in our lives that require different ways of working. And in fact, in the US federal government workplace, feds are struggling to manage the mental load at rates much higher than their civilian counterparts. In fact, a recent survey by Eagle Hill Consulting shows that 65% of federal workers say they're burned out, as opposed to 44% in the private sector. And so that's why today, this discussion is going to anchor around first, mindsets. How can we consider humanizing the workplace? And what does it take to consider sort of a whole person approach? But also why it matters. Again, we'll dive into recognizing and addressing the impacts of workplace stress and burnout, and also professional isolation. And we'll bring in some tools and tips and best practices that you can use in order to help address that. But we're also going to discuss how, again, to design work for well-being. And that includes better meeting practices, what I call meeting hygiene, and how to build better boundaries for us all. So throughout today's discussion, I really hope that you'll participate and also help share some things that are working well for you or across your teams, or things you've seen your senior leaders even do and put into practice. So, of course, this wouldn't be a Mika training session if I didn't help model some good hybrid meeting practices. So on this slide, you see it's called wayfinding, and this is just a really great way to get everyone on the same page and level set. So I'll just highlight really quickly what this session is, but also what it isn't. This session will be conversations about common workplace well-being issues, the concepts, tools, and tips to help empower high-performing teams, regardless of location, but also specific to hybrid teams as well. What is it not? Well, this is not a full scope hybrid or remote skills training workshop, and it doesn't include all the tools to optimize and engage worker well-being across your high-performing teams. Let's talk about how we're going to interact though. My hope is that we're going to build a community. We're going to have conversations, and we're going to be sharing best and promising practices and maybe things that didn't work from your vantage point. What is going on in your organizations or in your personal daily practice with work that helps alleviate stress, workplace anxiety, worker burnout, build connection, avoid isolation? We want to hear from you. So we're going to interact by using emoticons. We're going to weigh in the chat. You'll be able to contribute in poll questions and also share those personal tips and tools that you can use so that we can really leverage that across our community and help learn from one another. That's our goal. But first, we're going to warm up a little bit. So if we were in the physical room together, hopefully over coffee or tea, we would be just chit-chatting. So we would love to hear from you. Jason, if you could pull up our first poll. In terms of how you're experiencing your personal wellness wheel spinning today, it changes each and every day with different dynamics, things that are going on in your life or at work, things that you might be experiencing medical wise. So we'd love you to share your vibe. So Jason, if you could pull up that poll and have our participants weigh in on how they're experiencing their personal wellness vibe today. Are you a Zen master? Maybe in a state of like blissful balance? Are you a warrior in training, facing challenges but growing stronger? Are you a seeker of serenity, searching for your peace in all the chaos? Or are you a joyful juggler today, keeping all the balls in the air with a smile? I think I'm the joyful juggler. I'll give you a moment to weigh in on that poll. And then Jason, maybe you can let me know how people are experiencing the work today and their own well-being. Are we looking okay? Oh, you're on mute, Jason, if you are talking. Just to let you know.
Here it goes. Sorry about
There
that.
we are. Thanks. That's okay. We can all use
That
a
is not the
break.
right one. That is not the right one, although I see a lot of D's in the chat, Mika.
Okay, well, good. I narrated it for you, so you can weigh in the chat too. That's certainly fine. So you're D's like me, joyful juggling, right? But maybe you might be, a warrior trying to figure out your place today and how you're feeling and experiencing work. Or maybe you are a Zen master and you have tips that you can share with us. That would be even better. So that's okay. And in the spirit of continuous learning, we're going to continue the conversation. So I think it's really important for us to, again, just keep in mind that workers in any industry, occupation, job, skill, or trade are experiencing enormous stressors with work and life post-COVID. And so it's really commonplace for people to be also experiencing this concept of loneliness. In fact, some generations are experiencing their workplaces and this epidemic of loneliness at rates much higher than others. And so, some things to consider around the loneliness epidemic that you can start asking yourself or looking around to your leadership or working with even employee resource groups and other supportive practices are, is there a large age gap that's playing out among the workforce? Likely so, since the federal government often skews older in terms of much older workers over the age of 50 than there are under the age of 30. But we're embracing a workplace that has 5 different generations at work, all with their different levels of skill in terms of connection, communication, collaboration, and how we choose to work together, and even embracing technology. But it's important for us to think about how we're integrating our new hires, whether the physical workspace we're encouraging people to use more for meaningful in-person work encourages interaction. Is it designed to facilitate connection, care, conversation? And whether or not we allot time for social events, even during the workday. So I know, a lot of times organizations will be thinking about, oh, lunch and learns, or, an after work happy hour if we're working together in person. But sometimes that can accidentally opt out demographics of workers that really need to be a part of that community most of all. And so throughout working with the pandemic, I had the great pleasure of working with teams in the Census Bureau. And really, they, for 3 years, were working fully remote, much in large part due to physical space requirements. But what was wonderful were the investments in time and resources and building skill around how we could create connections for everyone, regardless of physical location. And really saw that help alleviate some of that loneliness factor, especially that early career experience in the workplace. So I promised then to talk about how we can cultivate a culture of humanizing the workplace, right? And so this slide is actually from the Office of Personnel Management. And according to OPM, having an employee focused mindset really requires 3 steps: seeing employees as people, providing support, and practicing self accountability. And I really want to emphasize this concept around practicing self accountability, because this essentially is how you show up translates over into how others feel they can show up, especially if you're in a supervisory or management kinds of position. So recognizing that you have an impact on others, your behavior has an impact on others, and really taking inventory around assessing how your efforts match the intent that you have to be able to see and help other people in the work environment. So think through this conversation today through that employee-focused mindset and a lens of how we can all together humanize the workplace, regardless of whether you're a leader in charge of others or whether you're an independent contributor as well. Also, I want to mention, if you have tips, feedback, tools, responses, suggestions that you want to share, again, I really want to encourage you to be sharing that in the chat, or you can drop your questions because we're going to leave time at the end as well to have some dialogue around these topics. And we hope that you'll continue the dialogue back at your home agencies as well, with your teams, with your coworkers, with your direct reports if you're a supervisor, to continue the conversation. So we're going to talk about highlighting the difference between stress versus burnout. Burnout is a common term that's often tossed around, sometimes haphazardly, but it's interesting because, workplace stress is a part of our daily lives. We could experience stress from one day and not the next. That's why we asked you to weigh in on that poll as well. So stress is, you could be feeling fatigue or exhaustion or just a sense of tiredness, but it's not prolonged. It's not chronic. Maybe we're having a bad day versus increased or enhanced engagement over time. And maybe we might not be bringing our best to the workplace in this particular moment today. Again, maybe we're a little tired, maybe we're getting over an illness, but it doesn't mean that it's languishing, that it's continuing over a long period of time. And so the World Health Organization differentiates workplace stress from workplace burnout in the sense that, first of all, it is a phenomenon, a work-related phenomenon. And it's a direct result of not effectively managing that workplace stress that we just highlighted. So over time, what happens is that individuals are experiencing prolonged exhaustion, feelings of negativity or cynicism, reduced professional efficacy in how they show up every day and their ability to do their jobs. And again, the differentiator here is overtime. But you see, there are other impacts of workplace burnout that we must be aware of because they can transcend into physical, emotional, and mental health well-being as well. So aside from feelings of exhaustion, maybe brain fog, again, reducing productivity or trouble concentrating, it can lead to enhanced disengagement over time. It can lead to short temperament, anger issues, the way that people are reacting with one another. And I'm here to tell you, I hear a lot from federal friends across all levels of the federal government that workplace behavior is just not that all great right now. People are not experiencing work with joy in the same ways because they're really struggling to figure out how to manage workplace stress and anxiety and reduce the impacts of burnout if they're experiencing it. Sometimes we don't even know if it is in fact burnout. And I will say, even me, I experienced burnout during the pandemic. And it transcended for me and manifested in very physical symptoms that I was struggling with. Mysterious joint pain. I wasn't able to sleep well. I had insomnia. I was incredibly fatigued and tired for weeks on end. And I had a lot of joint pain and other things of that nature. And imagine trying to parent, a middle schooler and high schooler at the time, in addition to juggling the responsibilities of daily work. It was not fun. So it added an additional burden on me to try to figure out what these physical manifestations and medical issues that I was experiencing were. It also costs money and it costs time away from my employer. So these are things that are really important to consider because burnout costs not only the individual, but our workplaces as well. It's important, though, to understand when you need extra help and when to seek extra help. If symptoms seem too big to solve yourself, or they're mysterious and not going away, if there are too many to deal with at one time, or if you recognize that the things that you're experiencing are keeping you or your team from functioning normally. So for me, I couldn't even find the words some days to speak. And I, as you know and can see right now, am a talker. I don't know if anyone feels comfortable sharing if you have experienced workplace burnout or even just workplace stress and how that's translating over into your daily life, or maybe any physical issues or medical issues or concerns that you've experienced, or if you know someone that has. And maybe some tips or tools for how you have dealt with them would be helpful and useful for others as well. Here's what I'd love for you to walk away with, though. It's how to recognize also symptoms in others. I mentioned that a lot of teams across the federal government are experiencing poor behavior, workplace hostility, even bullying. It's feeling like that, increased harassment claims, hostility, and just general poor temperament sometimes, with people trying to figure out how they're going to balance and experience the new ways of working with the demands of meeting culture and back to back work and fewer resources and a harder time to hire new people to come in and help take some of that lift away. And so recognizing symptoms of workplace burnout in others is key because we can offer instrumental assistance to one another and help each other out. Again, that sometimes will translate into anger or irritation. If someone's like reacting in a way that typically they wouldn't, maybe they're typically optimistic, but they're really feeling very negative and cynical. Maybe they cite that they haven't been sleeping well, or for a long, prolonged period of time. Again, they're feeling overwhelmed, tired, or exhausted. These are symptoms that might indicate that you or your coworkers are experiencing workplace burnout, which is different than just workplace stress. Jason, anything coming in from the chat or anything you'd want to share in terms of folks or how they're experiencing the workplace?
Yeah, Mika, absolutely. Really appreciate folks sharing in the chat. especially kind of just reflecting on, exhaustion, low creativity, less time or feeling like you have energy to engage with your family or other activities. So definitely vibing with kind of the mental and physical taxing nature of burnout and how it contributes. And we do have a question, Mika, on kind of the other side of the ledger in terms of on the positive side, how do we build social time during the workday, either when we're together or in this hybrid environment, to enhance the team's ability to complete their work rather than making people feel like they're just getting more distracted and even farther behind on priorities or deliverables that they might have accumulated?
This is such an important question. Thank you for asking that. And Jason, thank you for flagging it. We're going to go into some tactics specifically around that, but I'm going to just speak to a couple of them. So I believe, again, I mentioned the 5 generations of workers in terms of preference and how people want to communicate, connect, collaborate, and show up for one another, right? And that looks differently. And it's going to look differently across our uber flexible teams, what we now call hybrid, and distributed teams across the board. So offering choice and flexibility around how, where, and when you participate in these activities is key. So here are a few examples of things that worked really well. Again, I'm going to give a shout out to the Census Bureau. They're amazing. We worked with data scientists, ethnographers, survey statisticians, the chief demographer, and they said yes to trying everything. And when I tell you the results on engagement were through the roof in some areas, but it took time. So here's what happened. They did listening sessions based on cohorts of employees, based on tenure when they were hired. If you had like 1 to 3 years of service, 3 to 5, if you were supervisory versus non-supervisory. And they asked a lot of questions, but they didn't just do it real time. They also allowed some pulse questions, some poll everywhere questions that were anonymous, and listening sessions to elicit information. And what they heard were that certain demographics of their workforce were experiencing the work environment much differently. And most of them were early careerists. It was the ones that had been working together for an awful long time that already had the benefit of having those established relationships that were actually doing a little bit better when they shifted to fully remote work. So we leaned on resources that we already had, that the agency was already paying for, like the Office of the Ombuds. I can't speak enough about that program. And if your agency has an Office of the Ombuds, you might not have considered that they can really help mitigate team issues and workplace issues before they ever come to a head, including difficult conversations. So the Census Bureau worked with the Office of the Ombuds to create and develop a monthly series called Candid Conversations. And it was real time, but they also recorded it. They allowed people to weigh in ahead of the event anonymously on topics that they wanted to hear about and respond anonymously after or directly, like we're doing now. They started a Mentoring Mondays session because on the FEBs, they realized that early careerists were not understanding career pathing and their connection to meaningful work. That was a component. They started just general team building options like a fall family reunion and a spring fling, and worked with the historian's office to do trivia around their mission and history, but in a fun way. They tied those team building events to strategic priorities like transformation, modernization, customer experience, employee engagement, and all of the DEIA work that was going on, rather than just throwing spaghetti on the wall. And if something were working, at one point throughout the fully remote pandemic, and it didn't work 3 months later, they moved it to the side and tried something new. And then they created an employee workforce council called the Culture Council. And I cannot speak enough about it. There's a lot of lessons there. I'm busy working on some case studies and really trying to highlight their important work because it really translated into powerful, meaningful connections over a span of 3 years working fully remote. And they're getting ready to transition back into the office on a limited basis later this year. I think they have the skills now that they need to work efficiently, but also lean into those resources building. And they did it in short snips as well. So 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 55 minutes. And the head of the organization, the highest leader in the organization, made time for it, sent out the calendar invites, requested feedback, and responded to it. So it was a multi-pronged approach. I just wanted to share that. I know that was kind of long-winded, but there's some really good examples there. Here are some other examples. If you're seeing either yourself or others experiencing difficulty focusing on tasks due to burnout or stress, you can offer to work with them, help them out a little bit. Instill that culture of instrumental assistance, again, helping each other out. That builds inclusion. And you can also take a really close look at how to assess your workspace design for connection. It's a little trickier, and I know that we don't have all the best models, but if you're interested, I'm happy to share some resources with you after this. And then also being aware that burnout and workplace stress can result in people feeling really not so good about accepting hard feedback. So being aware of that when you're approaching someone that may be exhibiting signs of workplace stress or anxiety, to be able to prepare ahead of time, maybe take note of how it's received, maybe lean on those employee assistance programs for help in terms of having difficult conversations and feedback with someone already is struggling, and acknowledging that. There are also some really cool tools you can test out. Oh, by the way, if you like anything on these slides, take a picture with your mobile phone too. Feel free to snap a photo or two. I love implementing this idea around what I call hero questions. So hero questions are ways to look out for other people and connect with them in a different way that's just not, how are you doing? Is there anything I can help you with? Is there anything that you need from me? Not just those questions. It's like, tell me a time this month that you felt energized. What have you learned about yourself working on this project? Who have you recently helped, and what difference did it make in their work or yours? Or what strengths you have found most useful on this particular project or in your other work projects this week? You could even ask them, what were the most challenging? What did you hate? What sucked? And how can we change that? And do you have ideas if your workload is too much in how we might be able to shift some of that burden to others? Invite people to the conversation, and it does take new skills. This new world of work we are navigating, it takes new skills, but we need to practice, and we need to build rigor, like in a community just like this, in conversations just like this, where it's okay to share vulnerabilities, it's okay to share failures, and it's great to share successes as well. Just a few reminders of other tools you can use. You can lean on your FEHB plan provider. Sorry, that was a tongue twist. Turn the card over. Look at the 800 number. Or if it's not, your public sector, government, work provided health benefit, get your spouse or partners. And see online, sometimes on the websites, they have additional resources, nutritional coaching, stress coaching. Sometimes they have access to even apps that you can get for free or discounted. Seek support. Lean on your employee assistance program. And again, those other resources too, like the Office of the Ombuds. Maybe you have a conflict management or conflict resource center. So I'd love to now pause just for a moment and invite each of you to think about it for a minute. Close your eyes if you like. But just think about it for a minute and then weigh in the chat. It'll be the easiest way for us to interact. What is your personal definition of well-being? And also, if you want to add on to it, how do you prioritize it in your daily work? Feel free to drop it in the chat. And Jason, if you could help call out just a few things that you're seeing or something that might be surprising or different or interesting. But I want to encourage all of you to keep dropping them in the chat, even as we navigate through today's conversation, because I think it'll be helpful for others.
All right, I'm starting to see some answers come in, Mika. I see balance. I see having energy and curiosity every day. I hear someone saying, I don't think I prioritize it. Clear-minded, innovative, but I have not been prioritizing this. Centeredness, peace of mind, taking care of yourself, clear expectations. I'm in a season where well-being is an afterthought, unfortunately. Peace of mind and heart and sense that my actions are making the world a better place.
That's great.
Having joy to complete my work well, using creativity and staying focused on the most important tasks. Oh man, it's going too fast for me to keep up with.
Okay, we'll come back.
Learning to
We'll
be
come back
okay
to
with
that.
mistakes.
Oh, I love that one. That's such a good one. Failing forward. It's my favorite thing. And I did it at the SEA summit this past spring too. So important. Pause and take note. I think one thing that stood out the most was like, I haven't really prioritized my own well-being. Well, if you can imagine, what does that look like for the people that you lead or manage or work with? What does that look like for the people that you're raising if you're a parent, or caring for if you're a caregiver? I just feel that we really need to take pause sometimes, and it's part of our work. In fact, it's what the US Surgeon General talks about in terms of harnessing the engine and power of the workplace as a mechanism for well-being. So let's make a tiny commitment to each other that we're going to maybe write it down, take a picture, borrow someone else's definition of well-being that you liked in the chat. And let's just think about what our definition will be and how can we live those values, even if it's just a tiny tweak each and every day, so that we can show up differently for others, but most importantly for ourselves. And here's why it's important. That great resignation, the great reshuffle, for women, they call it the great breakup. It is not slowing down. Across the globe, workers are leaving their jobs they already have, that they're in right now, at the rates highest in history. And for the federal government workforce, have you paid attention to that little area on the FEVs that is intent to leave? About 36% in the last year are saying they intend to leave, not just for retirement, for other federal agencies, for private industry jobs, and that category of other is ticking up. I suspect they're leaving to start their own businesses or just try something different in order to gain a little more balance, a little more control. And we need you, right? We need people to want to come in the government and stay and work on behalf of the American taxpayer who relies on the services that you all provide every day. And, when you're thinking about early careerists, again, on average, less than 7% of workers under the age of 30 that we have now. Have you taken a look at the recruitment levels of earlier careerists and which ones are actually walking away? Well, the very demographic of workers that we need to come in to transform our work and for succession planning purposes are walking right back out. And this is a slide that represents private industry, but it's no different in the federal government. I suspect if you haven't already, go take a walk over, make a friend with your HR data analytics team and ask for that data in terms of retention by age or generation, maybe even RNOG. In the private industry, in this jobs market, job postings that cite flexibility of all kinds, but also in addition, well-being and wellness programs get higher levels of engagement from the very generations that we want to come in the door. This is data from the LinkedIn Global Talent Trends Report, and you can see that job postings that highlight flexibility resonate at levels of 77% higher for Gen Z, 30% higher with millennials. I don't know what's going on with us Xers and boomers, but hey. I wish that OPM would do a refresh on this federal work-life government survey on work-life flexibilities. This data is from FY 2018, but if there's one thing that I always point to, it's outcomes from this survey data. I think over 150,000 federal workers weighed in on this government-wide work-life survey. And so you can see that those who experienced and enjoyed even just one kind of work-life flexibility cited higher levels in their increased desire to stay at their agency, improved performance, 72% weighed in that work-life flexibility impacted their performance. 83% cite that they increased morale by being able to participate in more work-life flexibilities, and that it improved health and helped to manage better their stress. Now, this data is dated, right? But imagine if you were to gauge the workforce. Imagine if you even conducted some stay interviews and asked people, what's keeping you here? What would make you rethink leaving? And maybe take inventory of that yourself. Because we each need to start integrating what I call a flexible mindset. Again, it's not just about flexibility and location. I mean, 80% of us are already working in field office locations around the globe and in different areas of the country. They're not in headquarters. So in my opinion, we need to start shifting away from this Is it hybrid? Is it remote? Is it in person? And really focus on the cohesion of our teams, regardless of location. So consider what kinds of flexibility can you build into your own workday? How can you lead by example to set the tone for others? Guess what? Lean In's Women in the Workplace report, the most recent one, cite that women under the age of 30% of them would increase their ability and desire to want to compete for a level of managerial or supervisory positions in their workplaces if they saw leaders with the same kind of flexibility that they wanted and desired, but they're opting out. And so again, consider the diversity and broad scope that this can impact in terms of innovation, creativity, diversity in thought, and the impact to your work each and every day if we could get this right. More than anything, workers want a choice. More than anything, they want to be able to choose how they spend their time and energy. And I don't mean which projects that they get, I mean how they do their best work. So think about what you can change and continue to assess what you can't. And maybe after this conversation, you could put into the chat or even just write down or take note of it, put it in your notes in your iPhone, whatever you like, what one small tiny adjustment you can try to make for yourself. Is it more flexibility? Is it leaving on time? Is it turning off your email when the work duty day is done? Maybe you use that schedule button so that you're not stressing out others when you work best at night, which is perfectly fine. I do too sometimes. But I hit the schedule send so that it hits Jason's inbox in the morning at 8 a.m., not that evening at 8 p.m., where he feels a responsibility to reply. All right, so the next part of this conversation, this might be, well, I'd love to hear your insights in terms of if you like it or not. Because I'm gonna dig at you a little bit. Each one of us, I mean, the collective you. We're gonna talk about meeting hygiene and building better boundaries at work. We all know that time wasted in poor meetings, badly set up meetings, and unnecessary meetings costs us time and resources. But what we might not always consider is that it impacts and increases workplace stress, which can lead to workplace burnout. So during the pandemic, we've heard a lot about this concept of Zoom fatigue. This is a real physical manifestation. Neuroscientists and neuro leaders across the globe have highlighted the data behind it, and it results from a combination of mirror anxiety, being physically trapped in one location and staring at your beautiful face on the screen and trying also to read other people's body language. It increases cognitive load, and it also results from trying to interpret physical and nonverbal cues like facial issues. Is that person scorning or smiling? Did they roll their eyes? Did it land? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to read your physical body over a camera. And so there is a physical tax that comes with that. Again, physical fatigue, eye strain. Have you all gone to the doctor? Because guess what? There's this thing called dry eye syndrome. I mean, these eye doctors are seeing people at rates like never before. Your physical therapist, your chiropractor, your orthopedic doctors, they are making bank because of the way we work. So we're doing this to ourselves. Decreased motivation, feelings of running on empty, if any of you can resonate with that. Emotional exhaustion, and then reduced productivity because of all these meetings. So I want to talk about a few tools that we can use. I'm going to highlight them. Again, this is quick and dirty, right? Like each one of these sections of today's conversation could be a full skills team building workshop or individual training. Just keep that in mind. So it's meant to be the highlights. But I want to encourage you to think about how we can hold ourselves accountable to reduce the number of unnecessary meetings and find different ways of working. How can we get work done without requiring someone else's time? How can we make sure that in the spirit of collaborating and making sure that everyone's included, we don't over-invite and then make it feel like you have to show up to this meeting, even though you should have been an optional? And if we increase the way that we have efficiencies around our work across distributed flexible hybrid teams. We could also consider being able to record meeting notes and catching you up in a different time that's convenient for you and doesn't pull you away from the productive deep work that you might have already been doing. So we'll talk a little bit about using this fun matrix. Again, if you want to take a picture, you can. Or if you have tools that have helped as well to help create safeguards around designing work for well-being, please drop them in the chat and share. So this is a really fun little matrix. It's not a joke. In, you know, that age-old meme that is like, does this have to be a meeting, or does it, or could it be an email rather? It resonates and it's important because it affects worker well-being. It impacts them directly. So this little matrix is around thinking about, you know, if I have thought through this, maybe I don't need to just ping someone and say, hey, do you got a minute? Hey, can we talk for a second? What that does when you message someone or send an email or ask for a quick invite without setting the tone for what you're discussing or why it's necessary to meet, it signals an alarm. Just think about it. If you were reaching out to someone that was sort of a junior employee or maybe early career, and you're a higher level or they're a supervisor, and I say, hey, Mika, you got a second? In a minute, I'm going to think, oh no, what did I do wrong? Did something happen? It not only does it pull me away from the task that I was doing, but it signals an alarm that something could be wrong. Instead, you might say, hey, Mika, I have a question about project X, and I'd really love your thoughts on whether or not we can change the deadline or if you think you'll be able to meet it still. That sets the context. It alleviates stress on my end, and then I can have a prepared conversation around what you actually want to talk about. So consider that. Do you need outside input to make progress on something? Does moving forward require real-time conversations, time from someone else? Does it necessitate a face-to-face meeting, or can I record a question and send it to you? You know, there's a lot of fun tools now coming out in our collaborative technology that can help alleviate the way that we're working together, the way that we typically do meeting to meeting. And so thinking about how we can schedule and prepare, but also reduce people's time and giving them an out if it's an optional choice for them to come to the meeting. We can be using alternatives again and choices. When you're talking about 5 different generations of worker, can this be a walk and talk? What if we used it as an ability to connect, but we're going to go outside and jump on the phone call, you know, the old phone instead of just Messenger? What if I could allow video optional check-ins? So if you're not feeling up to it today, and I don't want to brush my hair today, and I'm really tired, I just got the flu and I'm recovering, maybe we connect a different way. Think about, again, through the lens of what do you have control over? The meetings that you're scheduling, be sure to only invite the ones that are absolutely necessary and put everyone else on an optional. And maybe in your agenda, you say, optional invitees. Please feel free not to accept this meeting invitation. We will catch you up in a shared notes document provided after the meeting. You can record yourself on PowerPoint presentations and send the PowerPoint presentations and they can play them. Literally just PowerPoint. Shared documents, texting, shared meeting notes. Find out how people want to connect. How do you want to connect? And share that information. This will help set better boundaries and help your back-to-back meeting fatigue that's happening. I call that a blended meeting. So when a meeting is required, when it's necessary, because there are meetings that are necessary, right? Like we have to get together. Sometimes we have to hash things out. Maybe we're kicking off a new project. Maybe we need to ideate on something or really troubleshoot something together. I really recommend using what's called a blended meeting. And that's a combination of asynchronous collaboration and synchronous collaboration. So it might look like requiring some asynchronous pre-work. Hey, Jason, I'm going to send an invitation for next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Before we meet, I'd love for you to look at this, refresh yourselves on the FY24 strategic priorities, and come prepared to let me know, is there anything you want to change or add? By the way, here's a shared meeting notes. You can add your thoughts in here before the meeting, and maybe we make the meeting 25 minutes instead of 65 minutes or 2 hours. Are you doing roundtables or not roundtables, I will say team check-ins? Maybe you have a regular team check-ins where everyone is just reporting a list of tasks that they completed. That does not have to be a meeting. Newsflash. I have seen it in action in private industry. You can do updates asynchronously in a shared PowerPoint or in a shared folder, and then come to the meeting for some highlights, maybe some together time. Maybe you're going to learn something new. Maybe you're going to talk about how it can strategically align to other areas. Again, meetings are important when done well and when planned for. Just some things to consider. I'm gonna look at my time because I want to leave time for questions too.
You've got
Here,
about 15 minutes. You're doing all
okay,
right.
great. So here are 6 steps for a flawless, again, what I call blended meeting. You decide first, think about it. Which tasks can be done synchronously versus asynchronously, meaning requiring people's time or not requiring people's time, where they can do it on their own, and commit to adding that into the agenda or the pre-planning documents for your meeting. Work backwards from deadlines. You will assign pre-work and you will share the calendar invite, again, inviting only on the required line those who truly are required, and optionally those who don't have to be there and can catch up another time. Sharing the agenda in advance, communicating expectations. This meeting is video optional. Please feel free to come. It's not required unless you're a speaker to turn on your camera. Those kinds of things. That way, not everyone is feeling obligated to follow along with what everyone else is doing. I know my role, Jason knows his role, you know your role. And then document, not necessarily record, but document any agreements, next steps, tasks, follow-on things that you need to follow up in order to make that meeting effective. And again, an easy rule of thumb for me, if there is no agenda, maybe send up. And I know that it's funny, but again, think back to those one-on-one check-ins whenever I'm saying, hey, can I borrow you a minute? Hey, do you have a second? I'm pulling you away. And studies show that it takes 4 times longer to get back on task when this happens. Again, it also can signal and enhance stress in the workplace rather than alleviate it. Maybe I just wanted to say, hey, I give you a bonus. Hey, you got a performance bonus coming, Jason. But if I say, hey, can I talk to you for just a second, and I'm your supervisor, the alarms get set off.
Yeah, and Mika, I wanted you to pull the thread on that one a tiny bit more as it relates to an individual employee and their supervisor. Say your supervisor sends you an email that says couple things, and then they refuse to provide you an agenda. What do you do if that is the situation that you find yourself in as an individual?
I would ask, you know, and I've put this into practice before. So you could try saying, happy to meet. It would be really helpful for me to understand what I can do to come prepared to have a discussion. Can you let me know what things we'll be talking about, or what areas, or if there's any deliverables that you want me to bring? I've also said, is it okay if we meet at a different time? Maybe it's not convenient for you. Maybe you had planned to do a little lunch break, or maybe it is your lunch break and you don't want to meet on the lunch break. I've also talked to a supervisor, and this was in the federal government, where they said, hey, do you want to be on this task force? No. Do I have to? I mean, not kidding. I'm not averse to taking on more responsibilities. But it was like, if you're really asking me, I don't feel like I have the capacity to do that. If you want me to, of course I will. But, I went to that task force meeting. I ended up going because it was their decision. And I came back and I said, this is a waste of time. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars. I'm really nervous. And here's why. I explained what the meetings were being done and how much time it was taking up, and that there was no agenda and there were no outcome. It was like a planning meeting for, like, I don't know what. I'll keep that quiet. But you know what? We agreed, no, we're not going to go to that meeting. So having these kinds of conversations, it's two-way street. There is a responsibility on the individual, right, to help your supervisor understand how best you want to connect, and also asking them how they want to connect. Is there any way we can test out a 25-minute meeting instead of a 30 or 45, a 60-minute? Could we do a walk and talk? That would bring me joy. Jason, would you mind if we did our walk and talk, or could we do a walk and talk instead of a video call? I really need to get some sun and fresh air. How do you feel about that? Start small. What's in your control? And again, we all have to navigate the no, but I imagine if you have a real conversation around the reasons why and maybe troubleshoot some options, you'll get to yes a lot quicker.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So finally, just, in terms of the agenda is not a list of tasks, right? It's not tasks. It's what we're going to accomplish, what's expected of you, how I want you to show up, is it video optional or not, and what we're going to walk away with. So these desired outcomes, the purpose of why we're meeting. Let's meet to brainstorm 3 ideas for our team building offsite in July. Or maybe not. And someone might say, if you're building this culture of care and connection and humanizing the workplace, someone might say, do we have to meet, or could we start with a shared document, and then if we have questions, we could meet? What if that was your work experience every day? Could you imagine? And then considering how to keep things on track, sticking to the agenda, start and end on time. It's so important. In people's time, you can't get that back. You can't get your time back. So if someone's going 15 minutes longer, it's almost inconsiderate. Let's agree this is the way we're going to work together. And that's why team charters are so important. And I do a lot of work on that with the agencies to help teams even just write down how they agree to work together. Following up on on items, taking notes, sharing them, and again, ending on an agreement. And then making sure the meeting was worthwhile. Here's the biggest thing I've seen private industry, fully remote or hybrid companies do really well. They end with a grade of the meeting, and they do it from everyone. Let's grade this meeting. Would you give it an A, B, C? What could we have done differently? So that you continuously iterate. If anyone says they have it on lock, that they know exactly how this is going to play out in the future, and that what they do now is going to resonate, 2 years from now, they're wrong. But think about it. You are developing skill and rigor around inviting feedback, continuous learning, growing, and team building with the way that we're working, in addition to helping preserve our boundaries for well-being. All important things. So, okay. Just a few other things I want to mention, and then I'll pause for a few minutes and we can get some reactions or maybe continue the conversation if we need to. I'm open to anything. Tools to stay energized. So this is for you, individuals. Breaking up your day, scheduling an out of office or no meeting hours, put it on the calendar. I really recommend putting on the calendar other things like medical appointments, school ball games if you're taking off to go. Normalize having the okay to take care of yourself and other things that are responsible or that you're responsible for in your lives. Add a buffer of 5 to 15 meetings between meetings you can schedule or that you ask your assistant to schedule. Obviously, we can't control other people's meeting hygiene, but we can control ours. Schedule stretch and sunshine and fresh air mini breaks. I can't tell you, even if it's 2 minutes. If you can't get to the gym that day or do physical activity, ask Alexa or Siri to give you a 2-minute burst of, I don't know what, wall squats. Play some music, boost your mood, do something for yourself during the monotony of a workday. Vary your routine. Again, offer those choices for meetings, walk and talks, video optional, and then please take your time. Be off when you're off. Set the example, and also set those boundaries for those you work with and for. When I am off, I am off. I set my out of office email. I've seen amazing out of office emails from folks in the government that say, like, we all work on different time zones. If you receive this email at a time that you're not working, please I don't expect a response. This was someone in NIST at Commerce. I had to give him a shout out. And then the importance of socialization. Again, we talked about that a little bit, but like building in time during the day to connect. So if you're setting a meeting that starts at 1:05 p.m. instead of 1 o'clock Eastern, maybe in your agenda invite, you say, we'll start the meeting at 1:05 and end it at 2. But for those who want to, you can jump on at 1 and we'll have a little social time. See, you give people an option. And it's okay if they don't want to play, don't feel like showing up. I don't want to tell you about my cat today or whatever it is, and that's all fine. Keep them brief and get to know your colleagues. And then last but not least, I love to just emphasize the positive no. Like I said, do I have to? Like, do we need to? Like, we need to be able to say, okay, it's okay to say no to some things. It's okay to say no to the meeting. It's okay to say no to take on more tasks. If that's really a question, is it an option? I love the Eisenhower matrix. My fiance tells me about it all the time and reminds me, I look through my tasks Every night I'll look, it just makes me feel better. I look at night to see what I have coming up the next morning and in the morning. And I'll look through the lens of, is it urgent and important? If it's urgent but not important, it moves to the side. If it's important but not urgent, it moves to the side. If it's not urgent or important, I can do it 3 months from now. Sometimes it stays on the list for 3 months. Please use that. It's the best. I love it. It really works. And if you have other options or solutions or suggestions, you can drop that in as well. And last but not least, guess what? You're in charge of your own stress response, both at work and in life. So think of it through, focusing on the solution. Remember that stress is always going to happen, uncertainty, budget issues, constraints, workplace stress. It's a part of our lives, but it doesn't have to be prolonged and it doesn't have to go unmanaged. You are in control of your own stress response. And you can also build small and grow in terms of what you can and cannot change, how to find different ways of communicating, how to leverage that employee feedback to guide your priorities. And looking through the lens, the power of positivity, I can't speak enough of. There's some days that it doesn't work for me, my friends. But think about it. Are you going to extend the benefit of the doubt? If someone didn't get back to you right away, was it their intent to not respond to me, or was something going on? Maybe they were doing some urgent and important task. And how can we refocus on the good and practice positivity in our daily work? Because guess what? That focus on meaningful work, the meaningful work pieces, the meaningful connections will help us build resiliency and well-being in our work practice. We can think about this whole shift of the new way of working, whatever that might look like for you, as a fresh start, a way to help cure burnout and professional isolation if we do it right, and rebuilding those social connections and having some fun. There's science behind fun. That's another training I have, Jason. So I'm going to invite each of you. You spent a whole hour with us today, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. I think these conversations are so important. But I'm going to challenge you to think about one thing you can start doing differently. Maybe one thing you want to keep doing that's already working well. And one thing to stop doing that can enhance the way that you design your work for well-being and for the well-being of others. And with that, I'm going to stop talking. Hopefully we have we have 2 minutes. We got to stop on time, but I'm happy to take additional questions. If you want, you can scan this little QR code. This is how we can stay in touch. You can certainly find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there along with Jason. We have lots of fun dialogues and conversations and share resources there. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time and also for participating and engaging in today's session.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mika, and really appreciate the engagement and the discussion and the vulnerability from folks in the audience who are sharing, your own personal experiences. I think for many of us, the past few years, and changing natures of work, and how it's impacted not just our work life but our personal life, have been a really big deal. And for me, my big takeaway coming out of this is, for those who are struggling and figuring out where to start, like, it has to start with you. You've got to take care of you before you can take care of work, before you can take care of your family, before you can take care of anything else. And there are resources, as Mika shared, and finding a friend at work or a colleague who you trust is really important. We are social beings at heart. We are meant to be part of small, tight-knit communities, and building that and finding that within your workplace is really key. This session has been recorded, will be available to everyone. Mika, I know a major question we're getting from folks is, are the slides accessible, and some of the other great content and information that you've shared here?
Yes, I will share a lot of resources after this. I also would love to go back and look at the Q&A and chat. If there's a way, I don't know if we could do like a LinkedIn live session or a follow-up in the newsletter or something.
Yeah, we have saved all of that, so we can definitely go back in and mine some of that for some follow-up
Yeah,
questions
that'd be
or
great.
resources. And one of them is really if around EAP, if AAP doesn't have the resources or isn't that, solution to everything,
Yeah.
what might some other recommendations be? Maybe we could take that one before we let folks go on to the rest of their day. if you just have any quick thoughts on that, we can maybe unpack that some more, Mika,
Yeah.
as a resource for folks going forward.
I do. And actually, OPM has a really great new webpage. I don't say that lightly, really good one on wellness programs. And there's some for coordinators and there's some for individuals and there's resources and there's places to get started. I really like it. I just scanned it myself. I'll try to find the link and share it, or you can even just Google it. I think it was actually in the write up of the Surgeon General and OPM's event that they had last week, focusing on worker well-being. So please go look at those because they're great. One of the things that I see happening really well is to have these kinds of conversations, these community forums in your organization, and you don't have to rely on EAP to do it. You can get guest speakers. You could do it with formal training, but in a group event. Again, I think people have had enough of individual learner and really are craving that together time. So anything that you can do, maybe lean on your employee resource groups, maybe volunteer to bring in something. A book club is a great way to do it. I saw the census folks did that too, around leadership, you know, vulnerability. Maybe you watch a clip from Brene Brown or Simon Sinek and you talk about it. Starting there, these conversations and normalizing mental health and workplace well-being and the struggles that every one of us face, but we might hide it a little better than others, are a great place to start in terms of being able to open the doors for conversations that help make work better for you, for me, and for all of us. And I do have some examples of great forums in terms of like Wellness Wednesdays that I've been a part of in different agencies and seen work really well. So if you want some ideas, please feel free to hit me up. I'm always happy to share or happy to come and work with your organizations too. So please reach out to us. We have a lot of resources and lean on each other and try to find the way to find common ground for all.
Yeah, absolutely. None of us are in this alone. There are resources and tools, certainly here at Fed Manager and Fed Agent with our friends like Mika and others. We're going to put up a quick poll for those who are still here. Just let us know if this webinar was helpful to you, and if there's anything else that you'd like us to cover in the future. We'd super appreciate it. We will be sending out a follow-up email to all attendees. You'll get a recording. You'll get some more links and resources. You'll get a reminder on how you can connect with Mika if you want to bring her into your organization. Thank you for spending your time with us this afternoon. Thanks again to our friends at WAPA for supporting this webinar. And most importantly, thanks so much to my good friend Mika Cross for being with us for this session. We really appreciate
Thank
it.
you so
Hope
much.
everyone has a great day. Until next time.